Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Today is January 8th, 2013, and I'm Faithless Forrest.
And I'm Larry Rhodes, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and people curious about living a life free of supernatural beliefs.
This is a call-in show, and we invite you to start calling now. However, we have only one phone line, so if you can't get through, we invite you to tweet comments to us at #FFTVKNOX.
Okay.
The show is, did I get it right?
It's an @ sign.
@ sign, sorry. My technological challenge is showing.
That's okay.
This show is a production of the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee, and individual supporters and guests.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun meetup, often at a bar or restaurant. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Old City. It's for happy hour and food after the show, and we'll have drink and conversation. Sometimes in the spring and summer and fall we do have Friday meetups, but not during the winter. To find us at either of these places, you can look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee monthly activities are on the first and third Sundays in the morning, and they're usually lectures with lively roundtable discussion. Past discussions have included such topics as what every atheist should know about the Bible, the death penalty, and Charlie Chaplin's film City Lights. The second Sunday is Book Club, where we have discussed Sam Harris's End of Faith, Martha Stout's The Sociopath Next Door, and The Humanist Approach to Happiness by Jennifer Hancock. The fourth Sunday is the Reflections Gathering. It's usually a potluck get-together at a member's home with a discussed topic. Past topics have included the meaning of widely used words and concepts which we frequently take for granted, deconversion stories, that's kind of my favorite.
Me too.
And doing good works. All right. I guess we've got
in the news.
In the news. All right. Well, in the news this week, there's been a recent Pew Forum report on the religious composition of the 113th Congress. The report begins. The new 113th Congress includes the first Buddhist to serve in the Senate, the first Hindu to serve in either chamber, and the first member of Congress to describe herself as none, continuing a gradual increase in religious diversity that mirrors trends in the country as a whole. And it's Christine Sinema, a Democrat from Arizona, is religiously unaffiliated according to information gathered by CQ Roll Call. I assume CQ is something related to the congressional roll call?
I assume.
Sinema is the first member of Congress to publicly describe her religion as none.
The Pew Forum also reports that Congress's first Hindu and other firsts. Hawaiian Democrat Tulsi Gabbard is the first Hindu to enter the House of Representatives, or the Senate. Gabbard in Iraq is an Iraq War veteran who served in the Honolulu City Council and in the Hawaii State Legislature, represents Hawaii's second congressional district, and takes over the seat held in the 112th Congress by Representative Mazi K. Hirono, Democrat, who on November 6, 2012 became the first Buddhist elected to the Senate.
So I guess he moved from being a representative into the Senate. All right. In 2006, Hirono and Representative Hank Johnson, Democrat Georgia, became the first Buddhists to be elected to the House. 4 years later, they were joined by the third Buddhist member, Colleen, whose last name I'm going to mangle. Hanabusa?
Sounds right.
All right. Democrat Hawaii. Johnson and Hanabusa were re-elected to serve in the 113th Congress. The first Muslim to serve in either House or the Senate, Representative Keith Ellison, Democrat Minnesota, was elected in 2006, and Representative Andre Carson, Democrat Indiana, became the second Muslim in Congress when he won a special election in 2008. In 2012, Michigan Democrat Saeed Taj lost his bid to become the third member of Congress. Ellison and Carson were re-elected.
Members of other small religious groups started serving in Congress more than a century ago. The first Jewish member arrived in 1845 when Louis Charles Levine of the American Party began representing Pennsylvania in the House. The first Mormon in Congress, John Milton Bernheisel, began serving in 1851, both these, of course, before the Civil War, after Utah was officially recognized as territory. California Democrat Dalip Singh Sond, the first and so far only Sikh to serve in Congress, has served 3 terms starting in 1957.
All right. I guess he's no longer in Congress because 3 terms starting in 57 he'd
That
be
would
done.
have been a while ago.
All right. Finally, Representative Peter Stark, Democrat California, a Unitarian who joined Congress in 1973, became the first member of Congress to publicly declare in 2007 that he does not believe in a supreme being. However, he lost his re-election bid in the primaries in 2012. Well, farewell and thank you, Pete Stark.
Best of luck. I would like to say that one, I think it was a House representative, the first one that ever was sworn in on the Constitution, this particular cycle. And I believe it was the lady that we represented, that we mentioned first, Kirsten Sinema, but I'm not actually sure.
Rather than using a Bible?
Rather than using a Bible, which I've always felt was a conflict of interest, because when you swear into either House of the House of Congress or the Senate, or any public office for that matter, you have to swear to uphold the Constitution. And if you're swearing on a Bible and you're saying, or if you believe that the Bible is the holy word of God and supersedes any man-made law, then you've got a conflict of interest right there.
Yeah, you got to decide who your boss is there.
Yeah. So who are you going to be responsible to?
There we go. All right, well, it's January, and we have some birth anniversaries of freethinkers. On January 7th, we had the birth anniversary of Thelma Butterfly McQueen, made famous in her role as Prissy in Gone with the Wind. She has a statement that's often used here, I guess. See, it's up here behind us. She says, "As my ancestors are free from slavery, I'm free from the slavery of religion." It's been used on many freedom from religion billboards and bookmarkers. You'll often see it in Freethought today.
Okay. People will remember her from Gone with the Wind, where she said, "I don't know nothing about birthing no babies."
Yeah, that was the line.
That was the lady.
She gave up acting because she was forced into rather stereotypical roles like that. The Wikipedia biography on it did mention, essentially after about 1946, she'd given up acting. But she did do something in, I'm going to say maybe the 80s or 90s, a bit part in a movie that I recognized, but I didn't recognize the part she played.
Okay. Steve Benson, the Freedom from Religion Foundation reports, says that I was on track to eternal Mormon stardom, reserved especially for faithful men in a church run by men. He has written, except for a brief stint in editorial cartoonist for the Morning News Tribune in Tacoma, Washington, Benson has been an editorial cartoonist for the Arizona Republic since 1980 and won a Pulitzer in 1993. He and his wife, Mary Ann, have 4 children, left the church, the Mormon church, in a highly publicized break in 1993, citing disagreement over its doctrine on women, race, intellectual freedom, and fanciful storytelling, as he has written. Benson lists among the benefits of leaving religion another day off, 10% pay rise, which is the 2 I like to cite, and getting to choose his own underwear in this particular case. Among his favorite sayings is Mark Twain's adage, "Get your facts first, and then you can distort them as much as you please."
I guess it's important to know when you're lying as opposed to just going off on a tangent. I heard a marvelous interview with Steve Benson on a podcast from Freethought Radio where Dan Barker and Annie Laurie Gaylor interviewed him. And he's marvelously funny in person like that. You can tell that there's something, I guess, it takes to be a humorist, that he sees the world through a humorous set of eyes. All right. Well, on January 8th, that's today, right?
That's right.
In 1942, Stephen Hawking was born. The well-known physicist, cosmologist, and writer has been promoting human knowledge by pushing outward the envelope of human knowledge, and then writing very accessible popular science books to bring this new knowledge to non-scientists.
Physics has been a kind of a hobby of mine for as long as I can remember, ever since I started reading science fiction. And one of the things that kept me up to date on the latest physics, understanding the latest breakthroughs and the latest theories, was listening to Stephen Hawking's books on tape. And they're very accessible. If you like physics and you don't really know where to turn to, or where you want to turn, to get the latest information in a readable or very presentable format, I would try those. Stephen Hawking's very good. He also stated that he is not religious in the normal sense, and he believes that the universe is governed by the law of science. The laws may have been decreed by God, but God does not intervene to break the laws.
And I like to point out that such a definition of God is not Jehovah. I mean, the whole thing about Jehovah is that he is intervening for his chosen people. To talk about a God that doesn't intervene, I think, is to misuse the phrase God.
Right, I agree. If you say that the universe is God, then we just drop the word God. We have a word for universe.
And in fact, Richard Dawkins faults physicists, and that would include Stephen Hawking, for even using the word God when as even some kind of a metaphor
for nature, or
for what we really think of as something that is not anthrocentric. It doesn't care about our well-being.
And there are a lot of people out there that would consider themselves deists, meaning that they think that a God of some sort started the universe and didn't tweak it and didn't do anything because he said everything just right. The thing about it is, that person has a lot of work to get from that being to the God of the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able just to draw that link to that God, the God of the Bible, versus any other God that the Hindus or the Buddhists or the Muslims or anybody else has.
Don't forget the ancient Egyptians.
The ancient Egyptians and Greeks and Romans and all those with their pantheon of God. All of them would have a real hard time getting from just the being who started the universe to
the deist starter of the universe,
to the one that they think is the real God.
Yeah. All right, well, we were inspired for some of these Freethought birthdays by the Freethought of the Day from the Freedom from Religion Foundation. It's an e-newsletter.
And you can sign up for the Freedom from Religion Freethought of the Day by visiting FFRF at ffrf.org. Not a hard thing to remember. And then go to News, then go to Freethought of the Day. Scroll down to the bottom and look for the sign-up instructions. We'd like to remind our viewers that this is a call-in program and the phone lines are open. We'll be talking today about Isaac Asimov, since it's his birthday. And we invite anybody to call in with any anecdote they have about his books, his life, or even just science fiction or religion.
Well, Asimov is a big subject, and the 2nd of January is what he celebrates as his birthday. Turns out he was born in Russia to, I think they weren't exactly city folks, but they weren't exactly the most rural of peasants, but they don't actually know his exact birthday, but he celebrates it on the 2nd. It is his choice, and that's more than reason enough for us to observe it today.
And if they were enforcing the borders against immigrants at that time, then we would not have Isaac Asimov as an American today, having been born in Russia. We have a lot to give thanks to these immigrants and every immigrant before and since for making the nation as strong as it is today.
And, well, for some time, I've kind of wanted to talk about the humanist, scientist, and the most important teacher that I never met, Isaac Asimov. So
we're lucky in that our lives overlapped his life by a good bit, and we're able to see a lot of live interviews on TV and radio shows and read his books while he was still alive.
Well, and for me it began as an exciting cartoon, and I think we might have a slide for this one. It was called Fantastic Voyage, and as a little kid I saw it. It was about this little plane that could be made small, and it would go have neat adventures that were a lot like the microscope that I had and was interested in at that time. And then I discovered it was a movie, a live action movie. And then I bought the book. So I discovered the cartoon, the movie, and then the book. This is actually it. I see in it here that it's got a, this book was printed apparently around 1966. And kind of, it's showing its wear and tear, but I read it numerous times. And so I guess it was time to bring it up. So Larry, will you sort of be my straight man here?
Sure, I'll play along. Besides Fantastic Voyage, did Asimov write anything else that you liked?
Well, per Wikipedia, Asimov's works have been published in all 10 major categories of the Dewey Decimal System. But as an aside, they write, although his only work in the 100s, which cover philosophy and psychology, was a foreword to the humanist way. And I find this ironic, as it is Isaac Asimov who taught me that what we now call science was not all that long ago called natural philosophy. And so much of what he wrote is therefore philosophy. But I guess the Dewey Decimal System people, they separate out science from the other philosophy. Asimov has written over 500 books, and from about age 10 until I entered college at age 18, and starting with Fantastic Voyage, I read about everything I could find with his name as author. From the bookstores, both old and new, and from every book in my high school library and then the St. Paul Public Library, I read all they had. And Asimov has led me into the world. To a youngster, science was just another flavor of magic. But Asimov showed that understanding the world was better as the magic went away, like a fog obstructing our view, dissipated by the warmth of the sun.
Well, you no longer need magic when you understand how things work. Arthur C. Clarke, another great writer, wrote that any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. So reasoning from Clarke's assertion, Asimov is an anti-magician.
All right, that's great. I think Asimov would have loved to have been known as an anti-magician. Larry, as you've been a great straight man, now tell me about your experience with Asimov.
Well, I made a few notes on it, but I have them over there.
Maybe we can get our technical assistants to give us program notes.
Right.
And we should ask viewers, if you've read any Asimov that you really like, why don't you give us a call and tell us how he may have raised the mist of magic and revealed reality to you. You know, he did this in his nonfiction work and in his fiction work.
Okay, I grew up reading just about everything I could get my hands on. Science fiction made up the biggest bulk of that, but I was an avid reader. I read a lot of fantasy too, as far as like Tarzan and John of Mars, you know, that type of thing. But even that was science fiction, not so much Tarzan. But science fiction did grow to be my favorite genre. I've read many of Asimov's books, short stories, but I can't say I've read them all. I still have some catching up today to do. But today's discussion has certainly re-whet my appetite to do so. Good science fiction not only builds on known science, but it also makes predictions about how science, technology, and mankind will evolve. The main takeaway point from science fiction, be it iRobot, the Foundation trilogy, or Star Trek for that matter, to me was that mankind had a future. Although it may be very strange and otherworldly, humanity in the universe does not end but continues to exist. Unlike many religious narratives that calls for everything to end next week when the Supreme One returns to judge us all. I found that Asimov's books to be warm, engaging, and scientifically accurate.
He had a nice way that he described what the branch of literature is that is science fiction that I think is worth saying out loud, and that is science fiction to Isaac Asimov is the branch of literature that deals with the impact on human society of advances in science and technology. And so even though there's science in the title, it's very much human-centric.
One of his most technologically advanced books was iRobot series, but it was always about how they affected humanity. That was the bring-home message out of those books, and they were very warm and engaging even though they were technologically advanced.
And some of his books deal with that issue of how do you make moral judgments? Because the robots are, in a sense, presented with that.
Right.
Can you quote the 3 laws of robotics by any chance? You got them here somewhere?
I think I can do it from memory.
All
the
right.
first one is no robot through, shall harm or through inaction cause harm to come to a human.
First for outlaw.
The second one is that robots, with the exception of number 1, should obey all human commands. And the third one is the robot should keep itself from harm where it doesn't conflict with the first 2. Now, am I a geek or a nerd or what? That I know those by heart.
But, you know, the amazing thing, of course, is that by stating them out loud, you make people think about it. And the people who design machines, in a sense, have to deal with that because we want our machines to behave that way. You know, our thermostat has to behave that way. When we design traffic flow and stuff, we have to kind of think about what can go wrong, how do we promote and preserve human life first.
Yeah, about the closest thing we have to a really advanced robot is an automobile, a new automobile with all the technology built into it. Some of the newer ones even have lasers that tell them how close they're getting to the car, to the curb. If you're backing up, you've got something behind you. And the first rule is don't allow anything to harm the human occupant. Of course, and the second one is don't let anything happen to itself.
Take the human to where they want to go.
Right.
And the third thing would be to protect itself. It is interesting that in a way you can think of the airbags in an automobile as a self-sacrifice. That, you know, those things are used once to save a human, and they do so at the expense of their future existence. It is interesting that I believe recently I've heard that California has approved for operation on the highways self-driving automobiles. And the amazing assertion was that they're actually not the first state to do so. I guess one of the other western states, or maybe 2 of them, have. I'm thinking Arizona. I don't remember the other, but I couldn't help but think that the long straight roads in Montana are just begging for self-driving vehicles.
Yeah. Well, I think we should ask the viewers who have read Asimov to call in with their stories and how he removed the myths of magic to reveal reality to them.
What might be the first story you read, or perhaps amongst the most important in terms of ideas they had? I've told you what was the first story I read. Do you remember your first exposure to Asimov?
No, I'm too old. I don't remember the first one, but it had to have been back with, well, the ones that stick in my mind the most were the Foundation trilogy. When somebody says Asimov, I think Foundation. I have read the Robot series and a few of his other ones and a lot of his short stories, but the Foundation trilogy was to me the most engrossing because I'm a political science major, and there was a whole lot of infighting and political maneuvering and that type of thing in the books, and riveting stories.
All right. I certainly read them early on and liked them. I read the robot stories. I was fortunate that I kind of stumbled into the robot stories in about the chronological order in which he wrote them, and I think it makes sense to read them that way as well, because as he wrote about them, his maturity level of what he expected out of the stories
evolved
too.
Yeah. And while we're waiting for callers, we can talk about some of his very popular quotations. Of course, if you write 500 books, you're going to have a few memorable lines. And quite a few of them have made it in to the internet, as we can imagine. One of the first ones that I ran across was that he says that people are entirely too disbelieving of coincidence. Here we get back to magic again. It's not, he said that they far too readily dismiss it and build arcane structures to extremely rickety substances in order to avoid coincidence. Go ahead.
I was about to say, in order to avoid concluding that something was mere coincidence.
Yeah. I, on the other hand, see coincidence everywhere as an inevitable consequence of the laws of probability, according to which having no unusual coincidence is a lot more unusual than any coincidence could possibly be.
All right.
That was from The Planet That Wasn't.
Okay. I'm sure I've read that one. The Planet That Wasn't probably was from a collection of short stories. I think it's Astounding Magazine used to give him a little, like, it was more like an editorial space, and he would write, it wouldn't be a story, it would be kind of nonfiction. And The Planet That Wasn't, I believe, was about the history of speculation as to whether or not there was an inner planet closer to the sun than Mercury is. And such a planet was searched for because the orbit of Mercury wasn't quite predictable.
There's a perturbation in it?
It wasn't predictable by Newtonian gravitational theory, and it took actually Einstein's improvements called general relativity to explain that perturbation. But the initial thought of that perturbation was that it was evidence of yet another interior planet. They even gave that planet a name. It's a fun one.
What's that?
Vulcan.
Oh my goodness. But getting back to this coincidence thing, so many people live by the phrase, there's no such thing as a coincidence. If you think of all of the many interactions and combinations of actions that you see, even that you don't see throughout the world, there's got to be some coincidences out there. And if you say that there isn't, it's just, you're using that as an argument to say that there's a supreme being. It's just another way to say, God made you come through that door right then to see me because I needed to see you at that particular time. Coincidences happen. They happen all the time.
All right. So the next one you've got here is, there is no belief, however foolish, that will not gather its faithful adherents who will defend it to the death.
Yeah.
All right. Stars in their course. I'm guessing that's another collection of essays from...
I would think so. Talk about no belief, however foolish. How about the Stargate people? Oh, is it the Heaven's Gate
that
people?
Was it. Yeah.
You know, let's all kill ourselves so that our souls can go to a passing
spaceship.
comet, a spaceship hidden in the tail of a comet.
Yeah.
I mean, and they believed that so vehemently that they actually committed suicide to follow up.
Yeah, I guess I laugh, but in reality, it's a tragedy. And you know, my goodness, how can people in the 20th century buy into that?
Yeah. Who was it? Cosmos series. Carl Sagan once said there was talked about a baloney detection kit.
Baloney detection kit.
Yeah, so you
What's
need
kept in the
look
baloney
that
detection kit?
Oh, it's really a set of memes that you keep in your head about questioning things that people bring to you as valid. Of course, he said that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So if somebody brings, that's one of the items that I would think would be in your baloney kit. If somebody brings you something like there's a UFO in the tail of a comet and we've got to go kill ourselves on a certain time to put our souls up there, you might want to call up your baloney kit for just a little bit and test these claims out. It's a rather foolish claim, but there's another thing about that particular claim. If somebody claims that they've got a pet dog at home, that they just got a pet dog, one, I know that pet dogs exist. Two, I know that people get them as pets all the time, take them home. And three, my believing in that will not cost me anything personally. And in this particular case with Heaven's Gate people, it costs the supreme sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's where you really need to have some extremely good evidence to support it. And not having the evidence, you should withhold belief until you get the evidence.
You know, this might be time to talk about the something that was in the news in the Knoxville News Sentinel. Headline, I guess in January 7th article about a faith healer. But he must not have been a very good faith healer because he sought medical care, even while recommending against the same for, I guess, a teenager. He was the spiritual, quote, father of a teenage girl who was terminally ill with cancer, reading from the News Sentinel here. And he convinced the girl's mother to rely on faith instead of medicine to try and heal her.
Right.
But apparently, it was discovered after he had died that when he had cancer and pneumonia, he went to hospitals to get treated. You know, so here we had someone, much like the Heaven's Gate, who was telling people, you know, this very fanciful story. And apparently this girl's mother didn't try and ask for real proof of how this worked.
Yep.
And you know, this girl died from her untreated cancer.
Right. We're getting to the bottom of the hour. I guess we're already there, so we're going to go into their mid-program break.
Sure enough.
You want to start it?
I'll grab host one.
Okay.
In case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is jointly funded by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Community Access Television. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
Right. ctvknox.org. This is a call-in show, and we are live today, January 8th, 2013. And viewers can call in now on the number on the screen. If you're visually impaired, it's 865-215-2288. You can also tweet questions or comments to us at FFTVKnox.
All right. You want to do the Atheist Society part?
Sure. The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 2 times a week generally, but during the winter we don't, so it's only Tuesday. We have evening meetups for food, drink, and conversation, and tonight's meetup is at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Old City. Our purpose is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, and freethinkers and other like-minded persons in East Tennessee. Go to meetup.com and search for Atheist and Knoxville to find the group.
And Sam, are you ready to run the ASK commercial at this point? All right, we'll get this technology started up.
Sorry,
Scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone.
I'll do the thing
Rationalists of East Tennessee meets for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
Okay, I guess that was the Rationalists commercial. The Rationalists of East Tennessee have Sunday activities involving lively presentations and discussions of topics both timely and timeless. But once a month we get together for book club. You need not have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Visit rationalists.org to find out more about us.
Both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet. There you'll find that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone.
And Sam, do you have the Atheist Society commercial for us now?
Religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else? Well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun.
All right.
Welcome back.
Well, the Rationalists of East Tennessee Book Club upcoming book lists includes, for February 10th, Wired for Culture, Origins of the Human Social Mind by Mark Pagel. March 10th, The Epigenetics Revolution, How Modern Biology is Rewriting Our Understanding of Genetic Disease and Inheritance, and this is by Nessa Carey. April 10th, Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. My wife and I are working on reading that one right now. Answers for Aristotle, How Science and Philosophy Can Lead Us to a More Meaningful Life by Massimo, whose last name I always mangle.
Pigliucci.
Pigliucci? All right. Massimo's a former
member of our
member here. He's moved up to New York now, I believe, so we don't see him often. But rumor has it that come May, he will come attend the book club.
Very cool.
Finally, June 9th, How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed, a revised edition by Jared Diamond. Back, I think in the early 2000s, they did collapse previously, but I guess it's been revised, and I'm looking forward. It was before I had joined RET, so I wasn't part of the book club review on that.
Back to the program after the break, and the phone lines are open. The number is 215-2288. You're welcome to call in and tell us what books by Asimov you enjoyed and what you liked about them, or how they impacted your life. We'd be more than happy to talk to you about that.
It's funny, although I credit him with teaching me the word physicist, which I am. I went to college to become a physicist, and he taught me that word. It's interesting also that he's also the first person to teach me much about the Bible. Occasionally his stories would reference the Bible. He often used biblical names for his characters. And would, I think, occasionally try and emphasize the fact that there were interesting stories to be told, but he would choose to tell them with a science fiction setting. I often think that much of his fiction was representing a humanist worldview where human beings were real important, and that always contrasted well against stories where somehow a god was more important or allegiance to a god. Asimov was always true to human beings.
He was the director of American Humanists for a while?
For many years, I think until near his death. And it was Kurt Vonnegut who I think took over after him. And I think you've got a quote here in one of your collections about Kurt Vonnegut, or by Kurt Vonnegut after Asimov's passing, which...
I don't remember where it is, but maybe you could...
I found it here.
Okay, cool.
He said, "It is an honor to preside... I am honored... I'm honorary president of the American Humanist Association, having succeeded the late, great, spectacularly prolific writer and scientist, Dr. Isaac Asimov, in that essentially functionalist capacity. As an AHA memorial service for my predecessor, I said, 'Isaac Asimov is up in heaven now,' and that was the funniest thing I could have said to an audience of humanists. It rolled them in the aisles, mirth. Several minutes had to pass before something resembling solemnity could be restored."
Well, for our viewers, would you like to define what a humanist is?
I cannot recall a dictionary-like definition. I will say that what I would say is, my off-the-cuff definition is, a humanist emphasizes the importance that we should have in our lives on our human interactions with one another. This would be different from someone who is a Christian who somehow thinks that the world has a supernatural leader that they have to think of as important.
Or most religions, for that matter. In other words, we owe a humanist would think that we owe our allegiance and our work and our efforts toward helping one another, rather than our work and allegiance to an disembodied being who is given responsibility for everything that happens.
I count Isaac Asimov books as amongst the best I've ever read, but I will say that the worst book I have ever read is the book by the pastor of the Saddleback Church, whose name escapes me, Rick Warren, where he talks about the purpose-driven life, and he says your purpose is to please and know this imaginary being. Well, Larry, I think we've got a call.
Okay.
Why don't you greet them?
Welcome to Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname? You're on the air.
Dave.
Hello, Dave. Do you have a comment or question?
I talked to you, I don't know, a week, 10 days ago.
Yeah, we've been off the air for about 3 weeks now, so it might have been that long.
Yeah, well, sort of that. Anyway, I asked you if you'd ever heard of the Hall of Shame, and you said no, that you were going to Google it, and I was going to call you back and see if you did.
I did not. And I think I did, but it's been 3 weeks and I don't remember what I found. Can you enlighten my memory a little bit?
Yeah, I need to know what this conversation is about as well.
Well, the Hall of Shame, gentlemen, is a hall of priests that most of them asking for money and this, that, and the other, and they all got their skeletons, and that's what's in the Hall of Shame. Jesse Duplantis, John Hagee, Kenneth Copeland, Joyce Myers. I can just, they're every one on there.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Hall of Shame, you broke up there a little bit, but I
Yeah,
think you're
quite a
saying
bit.
the Hall of Shame is about preachers and pastors who are asking people for their money, but yet they've got some things that they'd rather not the public know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just now Googled it because I've got my iPad here, and the problem that I had then is the same one I have now. A Hall of Shame is a concept that's been used by a lot of people over a lot of time. And the first one that came up was Fox News. And there were others for Electronic Frontier Foundation, Welcome to the 419 Eater, Pro Sports, Hall of Shame. So it was really hard to zero in on exactly what you were talking about.
Well, maybe you have to Google Preachers Hall of Shame. I don't know.
Okay,
Or
I can do that.
pastors.
I can do that.
Well, Dave, are you a regular watcher?
Yeah, well, it's all the time. I'm planning on coming down to Barley's sometime.
Okay, this would be Bailey's. Bailey's, not the sports bar, but the one downtown.
Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria.
Right.
All right.
We'd be more than happy to see you.
And I guess that answers the question then that you're local. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, today we've been kind of focusing on Isaac Asimov and his writings. Are you a reader of Isaac Asimov?
No, I'm not.
All right. Well, I'll be bringing a bunch of books there, and perhaps we can find one that might interest you.
You might say that he brought a few of his collection. He's
Yeah,
got a few.
I would really look forward to you guys' opinion when you Google that. I found all these pastors on it. I would really like to hear
Okay.
comments on it.
All right.
I was absolutely amazed.
All right. Well, great. Well, we got
Okay.
some notes on here. We'll try and be more diligent.
Okay, there is one thing that you might be interested in hearing about. The Freedom from Religion Foundation has a monthly
yeah.
newsletter that I don't have a
didn't bring
copy
one.
of. But instead of a Hall of Shame, they call it a black collar crime sheet. And it's, if you take a regular newspaper and open it up, it's that big, and they said that they could fill 2 of those every month. And it's nothing but indictments and convictions of holy men for heinous acts of one type or another.
Yeah, embezzlement.
It's not just a few. It's widespread.
I bet you there was no less than 50 on there when I read it.
Okay, I believe it. And I'll have one of those newsletters when we meet tonight. I'll be able to show it to you then.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you, Dave.
Thank you much.
Appreciate
and
it.
we'll say see you later.
Okay.
All right, great. Well, we've got a little less than 16 minutes or so that we could talk to callers.
Mm-hmm.
Love to hear about your experiences with Isaac Asimov, things that he may have taught you.
Mm-hmm.
Asimov began his career as a writer of science fiction. As a youngster working in his parents' candy store, he would start sneaking a peek at the science fiction stories because his father kind of disapproved of science fiction until he finally got his father to say, see, it says science here. This is going to be about science. And then his father was okay with it. And so when he didn't have his chores, washing dishes or serving customers, he could then, if he was real careful not to crease them, read the science fiction magazines.
There's a little factoid about Isaac Asimov that I read when I was doing my research, was he graduated high school at 16, went directly to college and got his Bachelor of Science at 19 years old. So that's quite an accomplishment for him.
And during that time, he'd begun to make money writing science fiction. Somewhere here, I believe I've got his collection called The Early Asimov that has, his first story ever written is Lost. I should know the title of it. It's mentioned, but it was not bought by anyone, and eventually he lost the manuscript, and he no longer remembered what it was about.
Right. He eventually became a full professor in college.
There's a fun tie-in on that.
Yeah.
While he was doing his doctoral defense, the last question he was asked was a tongue-in-cheek question about a pseudoscience review that he had written on something called the properties of thymoline or something like that, which was a substance that would dissolve before you poured it into the water, and so it could time travel. Well, Larry, we've gotten another caller here. Hello, caller. Welcome to Freethought Forum. Could we get a name or a nickname?
I'm Joan, and I'm just calling to thank you for listing the books that will be on Book Club.
Well, thank you for calling. Joan, for our viewers,
But I
go on.
have a question.
Sure.
Did you say the January one, the one we'll have this coming Sunday, Griftopia by Matt Taibbi? It's all about the collapse of the banking system and such and why it happened.
I think I messed up. I copied and pasted incorrectly, and I missed Griftopia. That'll be coming up this Saturday.
This Sunday.
Sunday. I misspoke. This Sunday. And the book club meets at Barnes & Noble up near the Westtown Mall. And what time does it start, Joan?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock. And you need not have read the book, but what, Joan?
Oh.
Of course, it does help, you're supposed to say.
But it'd be difficult to read Griftopia before Sunday, but it's a lot of information that sure will.
All right.
The person who leads the discussion will give a lot of information to people who haven't even read the book, and they'll enjoy it. And thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, Joan. Thank you.
Thank you for calling in.
We'll say bye then. All right. Well, great. We've got about 13 minutes left. We'd love to hear people how Isaac Asimov may have helped them. I was kind of leading up to the fact that he began his early career writing science fiction. And then an important event happened. In 1957, the Soviets did what? Sputnik went up. And so, although Isaac Asimov composed on a typewriter, I like to say that he set down his pen, his fiction typewriter, and he picked up his nonfiction typewriter, and he began to write things to popularize science. And it is from reading those books that I sailed through junior high school and high school, because I was already learning these things in the most fun and pleasant way you can imagine. And in fact, I say that I'm a physicist by education, but he taught me the word. And he taught it to me, I believe, while I was reading the book called The Neutrino, which is about subatomic particles, which I'm sure I read it in 7th grade. It was, marvelously accessible even to someone that young.
And it's very important. The popularization of science is very important. We've had quite a few in our lifetime. Mr. Science, Bill Nye.
Yes, the science guy.
Carl Sagan. And the astronomer.
Oh, Neil deGrasse Tyson. All right. I think of Sagan, of course, is that too.
Yeah. But one of the points I wanted to make was we need to keep in mind the Library of Alexandria and its demise. One of the reasons they say that it was torn down and burned by the people that lived around it, many of them, if not most of them, were religious, was the fact that they kept the sciences to themselves pretty much. Some of the sciences they considered too dangerous for people to learn, for the populace in general to know. Mathematics, we're talking certain types of mathematics, an irrational number, that type of thing. They thought, the people on the outside of the library thought that they were doing magic in there.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really important for people to understand science, the general populace to know about science, so that we can keep this enlightenment going. It is entirely possible to lose enlightenment if we lose our general appreciation for science and its works.
So Larry, what is the Enlightenment? I mean, I learned all this stuff from Asimov as well.
Please tell us what he said.
Well,
I know what it is. I find it hard to put it into words.
All right. So it is from Asimov that I learned that prior to the Dark Ages, there had been a scientific period as well. The first scientist his name is Thales of Miletus, which is a city on Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey. And I learned this from Asimov, and learned about what the Greeks discovered about geometry and astronomy. The ancient Greeks measured the size of the Earth. They measured the distance to the moon. They measured the size of the moon.
They knew the size and the shape of the Earth 2,500 years ago.
Yep. And He did fault them in one sense, and that was that they didn't often think to do experiments to determine truth. We've got another call. I pushed the button last time.
Welcome to Freethought Forum. May we have a name or a nickname? You're on the air.
Hello, caller.
Please.
Kathy.
Kathy?
Yes.
Okay, welcome to the show. Did you have a comment or question?
Yes, I don't understand. I mean, are you all discussing not believing in God?
Yes, ma'am. We're both atheists. But we're discussing religion and science fiction and literature and quite a few things here. Did you have a comment or question that you'd like to bring to the table?
Yeah, certainly this is your chance to ask an atheist.
I don't understand how anybody cannot believe in God.
Well, and that's part of why we do the show. We want the people of East Tennessee to understand that not everyone can accept this idea that comes out of the Bible. And you know, I border on you know, cheap ridicule here, but it is important to understand that many of us believe the world is, we would say, natural. That there aren't any gods that are changing the rules by how things work.
We only have a few minutes left in the show, but we are meeting at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria after the show, and we invite anybody that's friendly to come down and talk to us and kind of feel us out.
Yeah. I guess one of the ways we approach it is that we want to ask you, do you understand that, you know, human beings have talked about a lot of different kinds of gods over the time?
And no gods.
And there have always been atheists as well. You know, so my guess is that, you know, you probably follow the religion of your parents. Is that the case?
Yes, I do.
And
most people in the world do.
And do you think that perhaps if you were born in a country where Allah was the God, that would be the God that you would follow?
Or Shiva?
Well, it would depend on whether I was ever introduced to the Bible.
So, in other words, you're kind of admitting that you believe in what you've been exposed to. And that's probably going to be the case of most people on the planet. The people who follow the Quran.
Yes, it doesn't matter what religion you are. Everybody's going to have to kneel to God at the end of time.
Or else what?
And that includes everybody.
Or else what? I mean.
Or else what, Kathy?
No, it's not a or else what. You just going to.
Well, that's a truth claim about the world, and how do you know that?
Yeah,
because it says so in the Bible.
Well, we don't happen to believe. We don't happen to believe that.
Bible basically stands for basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Yeah, but we don't happen to believe in souls either.
Yeah, so we don't think we're gonna have an afterlife.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time, and I will.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up really bad. Could you try that again?
Say again, Kathy. You broke up. All right. I think she was saying she was going to pray for us.
Okay.
And Kathy, if you've turned your speaker back on, we want to say, well, thank you for praying for us, because we understand that's your way of
wishing us well.
Of wishing us well, fellow human beings. And we understand that because we feel that too. What we don't believe is that there's any reason to believe many of the absurd claims of the Bible. The Bible has talking snakes in it.
And it proposes that slavery is a good thing, and that we should stay with slavery, and we should kill homosexuals.
The Bible never once condemns rape. In fact, it says that a woman who's raped, that the raper can marry her by paying his father, or her father.
Plus, he's the largest or the biggest genocide.
If the Bible be true, the God of the Bible killed more people than any Hitler did.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
We have 5 minutes left, or about 4 of which we can use for talking, and we welcome your phone calls. I've
forgotten what we were talking about other than Asimov, and I was saying how he was teaching me not only about science but also the Bible and history.
Right.
The history of science. I asked about the Second Enlightenment. Oh, we got another call. Quick like. You push the button.
Welcome to Freethought Forum. You're on the air. May we have a name or a nickname?
Chuck.
Chuck? Welcome. Did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I wanted to say this about Isaac Asimov. He was one of the few science writers I've ever read who wrote his talk to you instead of explain things in such a way.
Chuck, I'm sorry, but
could understand.
Chuck, I'm sorry, but you're breaking up very badly. Can you?
Ideas develop, and not just have them given to it instead of derived.
I think I'm following you, Chuck. What you're saying is that Asimov is one of the few writers who didn't talk at you. Yeah.
It made it activity and something that was like I think that
Chuck,
thing for people who are studying science have some understanding of how ideas develop and some encourage that maybe they can do it too.
Sure. Chuck, the connection we have to you is really bad. I'm going to do my best to paraphrase some of what you said, and it doesn't seem like the connection's getting any better. So let me say thanks for calling in, and why don't you listen to your television, and I'll try and respond to what I think you said. Okay.
thank you for calling.
Yeah, so what Chuck was saying is that Asimov didn't talk down to you. What he did is he led you through a process of imagining how the experiments were done so that you could understand the discoveries of science. I remember him talking about how atoms worked in ideal gases in terms of them being hard balls that you could bounce around, and you could visualize that, and it gave you an intuitive understanding. And I think that was what Chuck was talking about.
He was very good about bringing the particulars of any experiment or law of physics into the story so much that you had to pay attention to it to understand how the story was going to come out, but he did it in such a way that it was all fun and very interesting, and by the end of the story you knew a lot more than you did when you started.
Yep. It's funny the way you talked about his story. You were still thinking of his fiction, I think.
Yes.
And I was definitely thinking of his nonfiction. I actually probably, although I started with fiction, science, Fantastic Voyage, I probably very quickly, it may even be the second book of his I read, which was The Neutrino, which was about particle physics. And then I did The Atom. They were actually written to be read in the opposite order. A fantastic pair of books he wrote, The Human Body and the Human Brain. To this day, I think they're the greatest way to learn an introduction to human anatomy. Man, we're down to just a minute and a half.
Let me get this one quote. He said, "If I were not an atheist, I would believe in a God who would choose to save people on the basis of the totality of their lives, not the pattern of their words." I think that's true.
All right, a very humanist thing.
Yeah.
All right, well, it looks like we're getting close to the end here. It looks like we got a call. All right, let's take it real quickly.
Okay.
Hello, caller. We're talking over one another. We've got less than a minute left. Please give us a quick comment or question so we can react, and then we're going to have to say goodbye to you.
You're on the air.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello.
Quickly, please.
Yeah, we got 30 seconds.
You say you don't believe in anything?
We don't believe in God.
Well, we don't believe in God. I believe in plenty of things. I believe I'm here, and I believe you're here calling
I believe most everything else you believe.
Yeah, and we're at the end of the show, so why don't you please hang up. We'll sign off, and we encourage you to call in next week.
We're here every week at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, call in next week, please. All right. Well,
time to start wrapping things up. Get your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
All right, you can send us feedback, leave us voicemail at 272-9066. Anything you want to say in the last 10 seconds?
Remember to examine your beliefs. What is real has nothing to fear from examination. If your beliefs are real, they'll only be validated.
All right, and please do good in this.